It's about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh.
One of the hijacked flights in the attack this morning was American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767 flying from Boston to Los Angeles. The plane was carrying 81 passengers, 9 flight attendants, and 2 pilots. NPR's Mandalit Del Barco is in Los Angeles. Mandalit, what is going on there at the airport? Have they been treating this the way they generally treat a crash, summoning families to the airport?
Yes, as you know, the Los Angeles airport is closed. It was evacuated this morning, and officials from the airport and the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, are talking to reporters. We're expecting another briefing in a few minutes, but they said that they were working with the FBI and the Los Angeles police. People who, this morning at the airport, I went there before it was closed, and people who were waiting to get on flights were turned away and are now stranded. Some of the relatives of the passengers on those planes were whisked away to places where they hopefully were going to get some counseling, possibly to deal with. Although there's no list, definitive list of who the passengers were yet. The airlines have not released those complete lists yet, but they are waiting to find out more about their relatives, and details are still a little sketchy. I know that I can tell you that in Los Angeles, a number of events have been canceled. They might seem a little bit minor right now, but the Latin Grammys, a big concert by Madonna, was canceled. The U.S.-Mexico border is on alert, and people are just stunned. Theme parks are closed. Disneyland is closed. Hollywood movie studios are shut down. Right now, people are just kind of anxious to find out more details because, as you know, a number of those people, well, those flights were on their way to Los Angeles. 3 of the flights that were involved today in the incidents were
on their way to L.A. Mandalit, with LAX closed today, as airports were across the country, any sense of when those airports will reopen? Very quickly.
Well, we might know in a few minutes. They're going to be giving another briefing today. But it looks like they're going to be closed indefinitely. I know that the state buildings, government buildings are closed, and the government just announced that they might open again tomorrow.
Thanks very much. NPR's Mandalit Del Barco reporting from Los Angeles.
NPR's Jackie Northam is in Chicago, where the Sears Tower was evacuated this morning, and state government buildings were shut down. Jackie, what's been the response there in downtown Chicago?
Well, it's very, very quiet. It's almost eerily quiet in downtown Chicago right now. The lights are off and the doors are locked in most buildings in the Loop, including the major department stores, and as you said, the Sears Tower, other major buildings like the Hancock Center. The city officials began closing the buildings and evacuating them after it became clear that it wasn't just an isolated attack on the World Trade Center. The Pentagon had also been hit, and there was a fear that Chicago could also be a target. So they felt it was just better to play it safe and evacuate people.
What other precautions have been taken there?
Well, they've closed some schools. They've closed a lot of the shopping malls in the suburbs. They've closed all the federal buildings. Again, all the shops downtown. There's a real fear here because it's a major American city with several landmarks like the Sears Tower. And the fear is what's stopping the same kind of attack from happening here.
So there is apprehension, but the attacks took place in New York and Washington, not yet in Chicago. Still, people are concerned.
Yeah, they certainly are. The few people that I talked to who are remaining downtown today, that was their main fear. And the other one, of course, was disbelief at just the extent of this attack.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
NPR's Jackie Northam in Chicago.
In Florida today, reaction to today's terrorist attack included the closing of Walt Disney World and the suspension of the space shuttle operations. NPR's Philip Davis is in Miami. What are people in Florida saying today, Philip?
Well, as you know, the president was in Florida when the attacks occurred. He was attending an education event in the Sarasota area. He was reading to school children at the time, and that's when he made his first remarks about the statement of regret and that the U.S. would try to hunt down the perpetrators of this incident before he left. Meanwhile, the rest of Florida is just in a state of shock and an elevated state of alert. The U.S. Armed Forces Southern Command headquarters is here in Miami, and a spokesman told me that the facility is heightening its security measures and is restricting entrance into the facility and has posted more guards and has taken other precautions that he preferred not to talk about. Meanwhile, in the civilian government, the president's brother, Governor Jeb Bush, declared a state of emergency in Florida. Bush says it's just mainly a preemptive action, but he ordered the State House evacuated anyway, and state flags are flying at half-mast. But the governor says he expects the state government to be open for business tomorrow.
Right.
As you mentioned...
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
NPR's Philip Davis reporting from Miami.
Mark Zadeklik of Minnesota Public Radio is in Minneapolis, where he joins us now. The airport there is closed, as is the Mall of America in suburban Bloomington. What's been the response there in the Twin Cities, Mark?
No, very much like it's been in other parts of the country. People are saddened, they're shocked, they're uneasy about what's going to happen next. As you note, some of the landmark buildings in this area are closed. We have a World Trade Center building in downtown St. Paul that was evacuated. And the tallest building in Minnesota, the IDS building in downtown Minneapolis, was also evacuated. Many of the workers were not forced out of their offices, left on their own accord to go home so they could be with their families. Most public schools in Minnesota remained open during the day. Many of them had heightened security. Some after-school activities and events were canceled. It's a big story here. Obviously, New York and Washington, D.C. don't seem very far away to people here today.
And any word on when these buildings might reopen?
No, we don't know exactly what's happening here. You know, the news keeps changing in terms of what's going to be open, what's going to be closed, when the airport's going to open, this sort of thing. The governor has activated a state emergency center. We have a special hotline established for people to report any specific, suspicious activity. The National Guard's on heightened alert in Minnesota, and security at state buildings has been increased. A lot of different precautionary measures in place. The officials here are urging the citizenry to be calm, and one gets a sense that a lot of the actions they're taking are intended simply to reassure a very shaken public that